Hi all, hope you all are doing good. To start with, thank you for the great response on all earlier video that I have posted on YouTube. I hope you are finding them useful. If you haven't watched the previous video in this series, I would request you to go back and check other videos in the same series or same playlist. So let's start from where we left last time. And if you remember, we were downloading an image for Business Central 16 cumulative update 2, and let's see how it looks once it gets downloaded. So if you remember, I ran the command for docker pull mcr microsoft.com Business Central on-prem, that specific version, North America, LTSC 2019, and eventually after some time and based on internet speed, it'll get completed and will show you that the download of newer image is completed. So let's see how you can actually find that how many images you have downloaded to start with. So let's start our PowerShell as administrator, and as we are checking on Docker, we need to make sure that our Docker is also running. So it's running. So the command to see all the Docker images that you have is docker images. Hit enter and it'll check how many images are there and show you all of them. So if you can see right now, it says that I have only one image, which is the one that I downloaded in the last video, and the size of it is 13.2 gig. So okay, to start with, we have an image. In this video we'll talk about creating Docker container, and let's understand what is a container. So if you remember how we related image to a software executable or a DVD that you download from web, and now we need to install that software somewhere on a system or on a virtual machine. So container is that you can relate container to that machine or that virtual environment where you are going to apply that image. So your image is your software DVD that you downloaded, and container is a virtual machine. So as you can install the downloaded software into multiple machines or multiple virtual machines, in the same way you can use the same image to create one or more containers. So while we are doing this, it's kind of doing a demo install of nav into the container, and after the installation you may need to change some configuration, but normally it'll work without any changes. So let's start. And to start with, we will need to run a command, new nav container or new BC container. And as you can see, my IntelliSense is not understanding these commands, and the reason is because these are not commands which are available with a Windows installation, and they come with a module that is built by Microsoft. So we'll need to install that module. So how you do it is you do a install module, and then you do nav container helper, and then you do a -force. So what we are doing right now is, with this command, this the PowerShell will go and check for on internet the existence of this module, and if it exists, it will download it. So nav container helper provides us number of functions and feature that help us to run nav or Business Central containers. So that's how it makes our life easy. But if you haven't used PowerShell before this video, you need to make sure that you set your execution policy to remote signed. IntelliSense should support us remote sign. What this command means is that you are telling PowerShell that the commands can be run on this machine, either when somebody is sitting on this machine directly, or if somebody is remote signing into this machine. So let's run this command alone, and it'll ask you for a policy change. Say yes, that policy change is applied, and now we'll look for the nav container helper. You might get a different screen while you are installing nav container helper, because there is a prerequisite which I already have on my system. If you don't have it, you'll get a pop-up, say yes, and it'll install that prerequisite, and once that gets installed, it will start installing the package nav container helper, which will complete quickly, as it's kind of completed here. So now if you don't see this command pane here, you can always go to view and say show command pane info, and this will help you, and we'll see how it helps us. So you can search for new nav container. So now we find it, and in the same way the IntelliSense will support us when we type new nav container. So this is the command that we are going to use, and if you remember, initially I talked about new nav container and I talked about new BC container. So you can use either. Nav container are more relatable if you want to relate it to Dynamics NAV container, whereas BC container are related to Business Central containers. But new BC container, you'll not find it into the command panel, and that's because the new BC container internally also calls a new nav container. So in this video, even if I'm creating a Business Central container, I'll be using new nav container, and you can use that for both. So there's no problem if you use new nav container for a Business Central container creation. It's just an alias for new nav container. Let's put it this way, if I'm not wrong. So once you are here, you can click on show detail, which will then show you all the parameters that you can use while building a new nav container. And as you can see, the list is long, so it'll take some time to explain what these parameters are used for. I don't use all of them all the time, but I'll be going through most commonly used, and then at the end I can give you a summary of what I'm going to choose to build my Docker container, and then you can decide which one you want. So to start with, as I said, you can use new nav container to build a Dynamics NAV container or a Business Central container as of today. So let's start from the parameters. So the first parameter that we see is the container name, the unique name that you want to give to your container. So let's say I'll give it demo1 or demo. Then the next one is accept EULA, which is accepting the license term. You should always check this. Coming back to container name, while you give the container name, if that container already exists in your system, the PowerShell will override it. So make sure that you don't have the name that is given already as a container in your system, and I'll tell you at the end how you see what containers you have. So accept EULA checks kind of you are agreeing to the license and terms from Microsoft. Accept outdated, it's a switch that will ignore errors while running a container which is more than 90 days old. You need to use this flag only on Dynamics NAV containers. So as I'm creating for Business Central, I'll not use this switch. Additional parameter, this allows you to transfer additional parameters while Docker is running, which I actually haven't used personally, so I'll not comment on it. Now the next one is always pull. Now always pull, it's a little bit tricky, so you need to understand it, like do you want to use it or not. I'll not be using it on this one, but let's understand how always pull comes into picture. So if while downloading images, if you just use this URL, and let me notepad it, and bring my notepad to my main monitor, or this for on-prem, or this for Dynamics NAV, then you actually during the image download, you actually told the system to download the latest and the greatest version as of that date when you downloaded it, right? So as of today, if I would have used this one, I would have got 16.2 image, which I got by writing that detailed command, this one. But if I try to create a container after 1 month and I keep this always pulled true and 16.3 is available, during the Docker creation, system will try to download the 16.3 because that's latest available at that time. So that's what it gets tricky. I never use it because I always want to use the image that I have, because I have a project tagged to 16.2. If you are working on SaaS for your SaaS customers or building for your SaaS a app, you should always check always pull. Artifact URL, to tell you the truth, I never used it, so I'll not comment on it. Assign premium plan, that becomes important because it assigns a premium plan for admin user, which is you in this case. If you don't know about the premium plan, I guess you'll have to read out on Microsoft website what that does. But it sets, there are two different plans in Business Central, so I keep it true. Then next is authentication. It gives you an option to choose Windows NAV username, AAD, or username password. If you don't specify, or if you keep this blank, system will assume that you are using Windows authentication and will automatically select you and ask for your credential while Docker is building. If you change it to username password, then it'll ask you for the authentication or the username and the password that you want to use to log into this Docker container. So I always use username password because that makes it easy. Authentication email is the email for the admin user. I don't need it. BAK file and BAK folder is the file and the path where you have stored your backup. If you don't want to use the Cronus database and you want to attach your own database, so you can add those details here, which I'm not going to do on this one, so I'll keep them blank. Click once, it's again a Dynamics NAV parameter which gives you click once setup for Windows client installation. I'll not even recommend it using it on Dynamics NAV because you are doing it for your own development. You don't need click once. Client service port, I'll keep it blank so that the default port which comes with the product installation get assigned, and I'll never have multiple version inside one Docker container, so it will never overlap per se. Copy table, I have never used it. You can read about it in the help by clicking on this icon here. Credential will ask you you can specify the username and password. I don't do it here because then system prompts me and I can give it at the runtime. Database credential are used to map a database user in SQL Server, so I let it be default as in my account that I'll be using. Database instance, database name, and database server are used if you are connecting a database which is on external SQL Server. So if you want to do that, then you can use these settings. I'm not going to do it so that it installs SQL demo on Express version on my container. Development service port is again a port, and I'll keep it blank so that it can take the default developer service port, which is 7049. Next is DNS, and this can be a little bit tricky while setting up Dockers because it can give you a warning while you are running your Docker command. So I normally do a global setting for this so that it doesn't trouble me, and which happens from here. You'll go to your Docker and right click on it and go to settings. Once you are in the settings, you'll go into Docker engine, and after the experimental false, add a comma and then add a parameter DNS. Put a colon, a bracket, closing bracket, and inside this I'll add that value which I want, and this is generic, you can use the same settings, 8.8.8.8. so what I have done here is I have added this part, a comma after experimental false and a value of DNS as 8.8.8.8. so with this being applied on my Docker engine, I don't have to set that parameter anytime in future, and that get updated automatically whenever I build a new Docker container. So let it get restarted and then we'll move ahead. Okay, that's done. Docker running. Do not check health. Now this switch, if you want to avoid CPU uses on health check, what happens is a PowerShell script runs inside Docker every 30 seconds, which checks the health of your container, and you see healthy and unhealthy status of your containers. So I don't check it, I'm okay with it, but if you have multiple containers on your machine, then it can save some time. I don't use do not copy entitlements, you'll have to read about it. Do not export object as text. If you want all your object exported to text for you to refer them, then don't check it. If you don't need those as exported to text, then you can uncheck them. Do not use runtime package. You should only include the switch if you don't want the cache to use the test app as runtime package, and this only applies for Business Central 15 and higher, where you can have runtime packages for apps. So I'm not going to do that. And DVD parameters, which is DVD country, path, and platform, and version. These are used when you are spinning up a generic image, and then you need to provide details of it, which I'm not in this one, so I'll keep it blank, and I never use them, so for me they are not being used. Next is enable symbol loading. Now enable symbol loading is only required for NAV 2018, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, NAV 2018, Business Central 13, and Business Central 14, because those three were the mixed version where Cal and ALV as an extension version 2.0 was supported, and AL language was introduced. So for those three versions, 2018, Business Central 13 and 14, you can check this, otherwise you don't have to. For Business Central you don't need it. Task scheduler, if you will be running job queues and tasks, then you can enable it. I don't run it. File share port, never use it, but this is used for file sharing, and the default port is 8080. So next, coming down to image name, and that's where we'll add the detail of the image that we downloaded yesterday. So what I'll do is I'll copy the image name from here, put it into this section, add a colon, and then add the tag part of the image that I downloaded. So what I'm telling this command is, while building the container, use the DVD which is in this image. I hope that makes sense. Include AL. Yes, I want to include AL. Include AL, what it does, it exports all your objects out as AL files from the base app. Now this and the earlier one that we checked earlier, do not export object, are conflicting. So if you set this, then you should not set this. Include AL. Include Seaside. That parameter is only for Dynamics NAV and Business Central 13 and 14 containers, where you had the classic and the development environment, old development environment and new development environment supported. For Business Central 15 and higher, you don't need it. Test framework, test libraries, if you will be using test, but like I'll be using test, but I don't need these two because they only include some parameter I'll choose this one, include test code toolkit, which will add all standard tests into the container. There will be a certificate generated inside the container, and I need that on my machine, so I need to check this install certificate on host, which makes sure that the certificate also get saved on my local machine, and so that I'm in sync with that SSL certificate. License file, as I selected test toolkit, I'll have to use a developer or a partner license. For a customer license, you cannot check a test toolkit. Also for the demo license, you cannot use the test toolkit. So if you have used any of these three, which is include test framework, library, or test toolkit, then you need to have a partner license added here. So like I have this license, I'll copy it from here and I'll paste the path here. So make sure that if you check any of these three, then you need to have a partner developer license. Otherwise, uncheck this and it'll have the Kronos demo license if you don't specify anything here. Now coming down to other parameters, which are locale, that's only it's an optional parameter, and by default the country version of the container will pick that locale, so I'll keep it blank. Management service port is again a port that is required for Business Central or NAV to be running. I'll keep it blank so that the standard is used. Next is memory. So the memory limit of the container is what you need here, and you start with a number and then you end it with G, which means this much GB. A container cannot run on less than 3 gigs. If you want more, for a Business Central environment, the suggested one, or for Windows Server host, it's 4 gig by default. So if you skip it, it'll set it to 4 gig, but the minimum that you can go is 3 gigs. If you go less than that, it'll error out during installation or during creation. Multi-tenant, if you need a multi-tenancy container, you can check this. This will build that. My script is it allows you to specify a number of script that you want to copy inside container. I don't use it. OData service port, I'll want it default. I don't use any of these. I don't want it to restart. In any case, I'll do it whenever I want. Run text to al in container, that is only supported in Business Central 13 and 14. If you have to do code merges and all, then you want text to al be running inside the container. Do you need shortcut? Yes, I need them on my desktop, so check that. SOAP service port, I keep it blank so that it comes by default. Timeout, I'm not using it. Coming down, time zone ID, which time zone you want your container to be. Start the container in that time zone, I'll keep it blank. Update host, now that's important because this adds the IP address of the container into your host file. So it actually adds a line with the IP number and the container name in your host file, which is used while connecting container using web client URL. So this is an important parameter that you need to set. Use artifact, I don't use it. Use best container OS, it gives you to this option, let you choose the best container operating system, and if it is not there, it downloads that, so I don't use it. Use clean database, if you just want a blank database without any extensions, then you need to use it. Generic image, as we discussed above, if you have a specific image, generic image that you have created yourself, then you can use this section. Use new database is used that if you want to create a new and empty database inside container. Do you need SSL certificate? If yes, you can include this switch, and we need it for our web client or modern client to work. and I don't use this one and neither these one. Web client port, I want it default, whatever comes by the product DVD. So let's quickly see what we should be using as the minimum parameters that we need in a slide. So let's quickly have a look. So the first thing that we are talking about is Business Central 15 and higher. These are the minimum set of parameters that you need, which is a container name, accepting the license, premium plan, authentication, image name, include AL if you want to use test toolkit, certificate on host is mandatory, license file if you are using test toolkit, memory limit, shortcuts, update host, and use SSL. But if you are on a previous version and you're trying to create a Docker container for Business Central 13 and 14, then the parameters change a little bit, whereas you need to have enable symbol loading, you need to have include seaside as a part of your container commandlet. But what if you are using it for Dynamics NAV? Then you need to remove some of it and have this list to be there, which is include seaside, username, password, container name, license file, memory, shortcut. So I hope this will help you if you are doing a little bit different than what I'm doing right now, and it'll make sense. So that's a lot of talking. If you want, you can copy it here and paste it here, and this will give you the same command as we will be running in a second. The container name is this, demo, accept EULA, assigning premium plan, authentication, username, password, image name is this, including AL, including test toolkit, installing certificate on host, having a license file, memory limits 4 GB, shortcuts on desktop, update the host file, and last but not least is use SSL. So you can run it from here or you can directly run it from here. So I'll use this one and I'll reduce the size so that we can actually read what's happening here as the container gets built in. So let's run it. The first thing that it asks me is what is your username and password. So I can give anything. I'll give admin and my password that I want to give. So this will get stored and it'll get created as a user. So when I started it, it'll start the process in a second. So as you can see, it started and now it's saying that's running as administrator, host name is Windows, which is my machine, Docker client is this. Now it will check for the Docker server version. Once that is done, it's good to go, and it will do some more checks, I guess. Let's wait for a while. So as I said earlier, if you have a demo 1, it will delete it. So it's deleted some data from my local because I already had a demo 1. Now it's using the image, it's creating the Docker demo, it's using that version which I have used. Style is on-prem because I was using on-prem. It gives you the platform detail, the generic tag, and then it starts checking the operating system where I have something missing. So it already enabled and disabled those things using the license file, and then now it's creating the Docker container. So it'll take some time to Docker demo to be ready. Let's see, and it's ready. Public DNS is done. Username, password authentication is being used. It's setting up local SQL server, starting it up, and starting the IIS, which will be used to host our modern client. It's also creating a self-signed certificate which make it secure. Let's see what happened next. So self-signed certificate is created. Now it's modifying the service tier with adding these self-signed certificate detail. Now it's starting the service tier. So it moved next, and now it also using the license. It imported the license, created the download site, setting up SA as the SQL administrator and enabling it. At the same time, it also added admin as the sysadmin and admin is my username, which I used while setting it up. And now so many things happened at the same time. It gave you IP address, a host name, a DNS, a web client address, a dev server, the instance name, some files, we'll talk about it, and it gives you a warning that the container is a little bit old, so that's okay. Now initializing it took only 167 seconds. Now it's ready for connection, but we'll have to wait because this is Business Central 16. It will be installing the base app and other apps that are required to run Business Central version. So let's see. It's already creating shortcuts on my desktop. So now it started installing the apps that are required, and this Microsoft NE is part of the test framework that I chose. Now it's synchronizing that to my tenant and also installing that on tenant. That app is successfully published, and now it's synchronizing my tenant. But while this is happening, let's see, because it already created desktop, what shortcuts are created. Let's minimize this. So if you see here, now there is a web client demo, and demo means because I gave the tenant name as demo, container name as demo. So if you give it different, you'll see a different name. And then there is a test tool, and then there is still something happening on command prompt and PowerShell. That's still being built. So let's see, it'll take some time to synchronize that app which is just installed. That happened. Now it's doing some other apps which are part of the test tool set, which is library, assert, and others. So as I chose the include test tool set in my commandlet, it'll be installing multiple apps that are needed to run the test framework. As you can see here on the right hand side, I made sure that I enable test toolkit. So it'll take some time based on what options you choose. If you don't do it include test toolset, it will be over till now, but let's wait for a while. So after some time, we'll see that the container demo is successfully created. If you are, and after this I would recommend that if you are not going to use test toolkit, then don't choose that option, because it may take some time. As you can see, I'll scroll above, that all these are part of the test app which get installed on my tenant inside my container. So you need to make sure that you only choose include test toolkit if you want to use them. But coming back to our discussion, container demo was created successfully, and the only thing that you need to kind of keep with you, and you'll need it in future, is this part, which is the IP address, the host name, the DNS, the files, and that's it. So let's copy them in a notepad so that I don't forget them in future. So these are my details. So once you close it, there will be ways, which I don't know right now, to get these details back, but keeping this safe will always make sense. So that's done. Let's spin up our web client and let's see what we get. So it asks for username and password, my username and my password, sign in, and it will load my Business Central tenant. So as you can see, my demo environment is loaded with some demo data into it, and if I go to my setup and extension, I'll have all my text extensions installed which I needed, and additionally all the base Microsoft extensions. So that gives me the container, and I can also connect to my VS Code if I want to code for this database. Let's quickly check the users, which users were created. My admin account would have been created and as a super permission into it, so I'm good there. If you want to see how we connected to Visual Studio Code, let me know. I'll make sure that I record a next video about it. And then the other page that was part of it is the test tool, which is part of it, and then the command prompt and PowerShell, which gives you some flexibility while you want to run certain commands. So I have one last thing before we close for the day: how you check what all containers you have. Because if you remember at the start of the video, I said that if you have a container with demo, it will overwrite it, or it will delete that and create a new one. So what you can do is you can always come and say docker containers, and you want a list, ls, hit enter. I'll show you all the containers that you have, and container ls. I'll show you all the container that you have in your local. So as you can see, I have one right now, and here's the detail. This is the container ID, the image, the port numbers, and all those things are available here. So I hope that makes sense and it helps you while you're building your container. I know it went a little bit long, but the parameters were important. So thank you for watching. See you next time. Let me know what you need on next video in Dockers. Do you want me to talk about how to connect this Docker environment to VS Code? Do you want to know, do you want me to talk about the space requirement that would have consumed while we created containers and images? So I'll come back with those videos as per your suggestions. So see you next time. Bye bye.